I grew up in Kentucky, and I remember around this time every year getting the all-state music handed out to us, and I'd stay after school and kind of plow my way through it like you might imagine someone hacking a trail through a jungle. I didn't really have much of a plan, and there was very little attention paid to detail, but I was proud if I could somehow figure out how to start at the beginning and bash my way to the end. And a lot of times for the first couple weeks I had the music, that was sort of my plan. The next day I would come try to bash my way through the trail again. And then when the audition got a little closer, my teacher or maybe someone else would give me some advice and kind of point out that maybe I should try to consider playing some of the music with some good time and some good rhythm. And I'm not just talking about understanding the rhythms, but actually playing the rhythms very accurately and very precise. So as you start to look at this music with several months to prepare it, I would suggest that you start out focusing on playing with very solid, great time, not waiting till the end. This shouldn't be one of the final steps to polishing up your audition, but this should be one of the fundamental principles that we're going to start with from the very beginning. And playing with very accurate time should be just as important as playing the right notes. You wouldn't practice the piece over and over playing every other note wrong, but too often we, and I'm including myself in this, we won't be so particular about playing with very, very steady time. So I want us to try to do that as we prepare for this audition. So what I've given you here in this video, you'll find in just a second, I'll outline 4 different tips for getting you started with very good time. And then I'm going to make a couple other videos that are going to address specific issues in each of the excerpts. So we'll outline the Charlier Etude and the Arbenz Etude. And I would of course encourage you to please work with a metronome as much as you can, and that should help. If you have any questions about rhythms that I'm not addressing in these videos, just let me know and I'll be happy to make more videos addressing that. Or if there's anything else you want to have addressed, if you'll just let me know, we'll try to get some videos made for you just as soon as we can. Number 1, identify the individual beats. It's important that you don't just see a long stretch of notes and rhythms that can be very intimidating. You want to see each beat clearly, and that's going to help you analyze it and process it so much easier. If you were reading a book and they removed all the spaces between the words, it would be almost impossible to read it. Even though you understand how to read, if you can't see each word, you're not going to be able to process that. And I think that's what we do sometimes a little bit when we're reading new music, like the Charlier Etude. It's very intimidating when you look at the whole thing and you see all these rhythms one after the next. But if you were to take your finger and I said, okay, now point to the part that's too tricky for you to understand, you'd have a hard time putting your finger on the page at a spot you couldn't do. So if you'll just look at it as individual little spots, individual beats, then I think you'll find that it's so much easier. And if there's any really intimidating measures, then I would encourage you to put little marks above each beat to help your eye stay focused on those instead of trying to process the whole measure or a whole line at a time. Okay, number 2, do the math on these things. None of these rhythms are incredibly complex compared to what you're doing in your math classes. I know you guys have algebra and geometry and trigonometry, which I'm not even sure what trigonometry is, but I know it's way more complicated than breaking down the rhythms in these pieces. So if you'll just take a little time, and if there's a rhythm that you don't feel comfortable with, you could ask your band director or send me a note and I can help you break it down. But there's nothing you can't understand if you'll just take a little bit of time to analyze it. So please do that before you spend a lot of time practicing this. Number 3, clap the rhythms. Put your horn aside, put a metronome on, and just clap them. And if we remove the challenge of playing the notes, it will help us focus specifically on the time, and we can really get that locked in. And then we can go pick up the trumpet, and we're going to be much better off because we're focusing specifically on one challenge at a time. And number 4, I've already mentioned it a couple times in this video, use a metronome. You have to use a metronome all the time if you want to be good. Remember, your practice sessions are a little bit like you're working and you have a job, but the difference is when you're practicing, you can decide how much progress you make. It would be like if at the job you could decide what your salary is going to be. If you want to make $5 an hour, it would be like you're practicing without the metronome. If you want to make a lot of progress, like you're making $100 an hour out of your practice session, you'll use the metronome and you'll maximize your practice session. So do that for yourself. Maximize your practice sessions. Use the metronome as much as you possibly can, and it will be just like you're raising your salary up, and you're going to make a lot more progress that way. Let me know if you have any more questions about these rhythms, and I'll be happy to try to help.